That's what brought it up to my attention. That's right. Dangerous place.
I would like to call the subcommittee to order. I want to welcome everyone to this morning's hearing on the FY08 Research and Development Budget for the Department of Homeland Security. I want to offer a special welcome to Undersecretary J. Cohen, who joined the Department of Homeland Security's Science and Technology Directorate in August 2006. Your reputation as a problem solver precedes you from the Office of Naval Research. I also want to welcome our other witnesses who represent a valuable pool of expertise across Homeland Security-related topics. Mr. Vayl Oxford is the Director of the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office at the Department of Homeland Security. Prior to his appointment at DNDO, Mr. Oxford served as the Director for Counterproliferation at the National Security Council. Dr. Gerald Epstein is a Senior Fellow for Science and Security at the Homeland Security Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He has served at the Institute for Defense Analysis and with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Mr. Jonah Czerwinski is a Senior Fellow for Homeland Security with IBM's Global Leadership Initiative. He is also a Senior Advisor for Homeland Security Projects at the Center for the Study of the Presidency. Ms. Marilyn Ward is the Executive Director of the National Public Safety Management Problems. Now you see, Bill Clinton would just roll right through this without a... But I know Bill Clinton, and I know Bill Clinton. Telecommunications Council, Representative Gingrey will tell us a little more about her background in a moment. We look forward to hearing your thoughts on how to support a world-class R&D enterprise at the Department of Homeland Security that keeps our communities safe. When the Science Committee helped write the legislation authorizing the R&D programs at DHS, we envisioned an organization that would support the science and technology needs of people in the front lines of domestic security, from first responders to computer security professionals, from medical workers to civil engineers. Frankly, it's been a bit of a rough start. We're familiar with management problems that have caused a lack of focus on important R&D priorities and the attrition of some of the best and brightest minds from the S&T Directorate. I've also heard some concerns from communities and cities, potential end users of some of the DHS technology, which feel that DHS R&D programs at the S&T Directorate and at DNDO have not been entirely responsive to their needs. But I do remain hopeful. Undersecretary Cohen has launched an ambitious new management structure to ensure a more cohesive S&T Directorate. Hopefully, the R&D results will flow smoothly from the earliest research concepts to the most advanced technology development. Only time will tell. Undersecretary Cohen has admirably acknowledged the problems within the S&T Directorate, which is the first step in formulating solutions. This committee stands ready to work with all of you and your staffs to ensure that we have a strong and responsive research operation at DHS. I am concerned, though, about the lack of a strategic plan based on risk assessment that should be the basis for research priorities within DHS. We can fund billions of dollars in research, but if we don't pay attention to the risks we should be addressing, we won't have the answers we need when we need them. We can base research on anecdotal impressions of need, but that is not the scientific approach that the American people have a right to expect. I strongly encourage you to carry out a detailed, systematic, scientific risk assessment soon so that we know whether our investments are in the right place. Nuclear threats will obviously be a major part of any threat assessment. I'm especially eager to see signs of close cooperation between the S&T Directorate and the DNDO. It is imperative that you all take advantage of the complementary efforts of your offices and avoid duplication. I am committed to working with the department to ensure that our R&D efforts there are successful in increasing our knowledge of how to confront catastrophes, whether from human or natural causes. I look forward to hearing all of the witnesses' thoughts on the FY08 budget request and how that budget supports science and technology to make our nation safer. I now want to recognize my colleague and the ranking member from Georgia, Dr. Gingrey, for his opening remarks.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and in the interest of full disclosure, I want to say that I do know Dan Quayle, and I'm a lot like him. I can't spell tomato or potato, and I don't know if I can give the best impersonation of him like my colleague did of President Clinton, but if I stumble, forgive me. It's my staff. They gave me remarks that are written in very small type, and I'll talk to them about that later. Great to be with my chairman this morning in this important hearing. I want to thank him for holding the hearing on science and technology developments at the Department of Homeland Security, and also a special thank you to our esteemed panel of witnesses taking time to dialogue with us about the role that science and technology is playing in securing our nation. Mr. Chairman, I strongly believe our nation's scientific enterprise remains a critical component of national security. The efforts of the Science and Technology Directorate and the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office contribute to the preparedness of our nation against terrorism and nuclear disasters. These organizations tap into the limitless creativity of our nation's scientists and engineers to bring cutting-edge technology to those defending our nation, from servicemen and women to Border Patrol agents and first responders. I am particularly pleased to welcome Admiral Cohen, Mr. Vayl Oxford, to this subcommittee hearing. Gentlemen, your service to our great nation is greatly appreciated. I very much enjoyed meeting both of you earlier this week. That was my pleasure. And I look forward to continuing the conversations we started in regards to the exciting opportunities that scientific research is providing to securing our homeland. This committee is committed to supporting your work and helping you create both a balanced and innovative research portfolio. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Marilyn Ward for joining us today to take part in this discussion. Ms. Ward's organization, the National Public Safety Telecommunications Council, includes representatives from many different first responder communities. Such representatives include the International Association of Chiefs of Police, emergency managers, as well as fire chiefs. Ms. Ward, I look forward to hearing from you on how the department's research and the development activities can further support our nation's first responders. In particular, your appearance will allow us to examine one highly influential program in Science and Technology Directorate, and that is the Office for Interoperable Communications, and I know you will tell us about that. This office has worked for the last several years with first responders to improve the interoperability of communications equipment and that work continues today in cooperation with the new Office of Emergency Communication within DHS Preparedness Directorate. I am eager to not only hear from our witnesses how science and technology efforts save or yielding immediate benefits to the defense of our nation, but also ways we can improve upon your efforts. The President has requested over $1.3 billion in funding for the two organizations before us today for this next 08 fiscal year. How that funding is allocated across the various programs and projects in your organization, I have no doubt, is a difficult task considering the reality of the world that we now live in. Whether the greatest threat to our country is a radiologic device coming through our ports, or an infectious disease outbreak, or a cyber attack on our nation's financial infrastructure, the fundamental challenges before us is how to best distribute the limited funding in the face of these highly uncertain and varied threats. In addition to prioritizing these various threats our country now faces, we must also consider the nature of research performed to combat them. Do we focus federal spending towards long-term basic research? What percentage of the funding do we allocate towards incremental improvements to our current capabilities? With these overarching questions in mind, I look forward to delving more deeply into the activities of the Science and Technology Directorate and the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office. I once again thank all of the witnesses for taking the time to be here with us today. I anticipate this hearing will yield a fruitful and productive conversation, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to hearing from them and continuing to work with you on this very important subcommittee, and with that, I'll yield back to the Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Gingrey. Other members who wish to submit opening statements, the opening statements will be added to the record. And I now turn to our witnesses. As each of y'all already know, please try to keep your testimony to within approximately 5 minutes or so, summarizing your substantial written testimony. And after your testimony, the members of the committee will have a rotating period of 5 minutes each to ask questions, and we will start with Undersecretary Cohen.
Okay. Well, good morning, Chairman Wu, Congressman Gingrey, and Congressman Bonner. I can tell you it is a personal honor to appear before the Distinguished Science Committee, and I've had the opportunity to testify in the past. I note that both the chairman and the ranking member went to medical school, so you'll appreciate I may limit my comments here.
One of us finished, one of us didn't. Since his title is doctor, you can take your guesses at who.
Well, I won't venture.
The one that didn't finish went on to become a rich man.
Yes, sir.
The other one struggling.
I won't venture to guess who was smarter. And I'm also humbled to be sitting at a panel with such distinguished individuals as are sitting before you. But I'm here to update you on the progress that the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate has made and discuss the President's budget request for fiscal year 2008 and how I believe it will position us to develop and transition technology to protect the nation from catastrophic events as the Congress and the administration wisely envisioned in the 19 pages of enabling legislation for the Department of Homeland Security. As the Chairman has already indicated, my directorate is committed to serving our customers. Those are the 22 DHS components and their customers. The customers of my customers are heroes, the first responders, the police, fire, and EMT. But the customers of customers are greater than that. For the Coast Guard, they're the guardsmen who sail in harm's way. For the Border Patrol, the agents who man the border. And for the TSA, the screeners. They're the hardworking men and women on the front lines of Homeland Security, and they appreciate your support. And in a prior testimony, I commented on Chairman Benny Thompson's very kind email to those many hardworking people appreciating what they have done. I greatly appreciate the support and the leadership of the Congress. Last year, you took a very hard and strong decision in September to restore the FY 2007 funding. That has been enormously helpful to me in kickstarting the Directorate to achieve the results that we all desire. and I'm especially grateful of that in what I know is a difficult election year. So thank you so much. And I also want to thank the staff, especially the staff of the Science Committee, but all the staffs of the committees I work with who have worked with me, have tried to educate me, and it's a very professional relationship. And I congratulate you both on the selection of the new staff for the Science Committee. As you're aware, the focus of my first months of the job has been on laying the foundation to align the Directorate for success, and that was to excel in 4 key areas. And I shared this with you last September when I testified previously. It was to get the organization, the people, the books, and the content of the program right. Those were my 4 gets. But they were focused on the threats, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman. And the threats, as I defined them simplistically, were bombs, borders, bugs, and business. And bombs, borders, and bugs, we can all feel, we can all sense, they're tangible. But the business is really about the cyber backbone that enables this incredible technology-focused society and economy that we have. And if the bad guys, as you mentioned, can take that away from us, we'll have as much panic as I believe we would from a nuclear device. I believe the record will show that we made good progress in my first 6 months on the job in all of these areas. And just to give a quick highlight, we have, in fact, with the approval of the Congress and Secretary Chertoff, in the first month, realigned the Directorate. I have a strong leadership team in place where all key positions are filled. We have welcomed over 20 new, highly qualified scientists and engineers, subject matter experts and professionals into the Directorate, and 4 government service personnel who left the Directorate last spring have asked to come back and are now back on board, and we welcome them and the continuity that they bring. I'm basically 2/3 manned of where I need to be by the end of this fiscal year, and we're making very good progress. I have no shortage of volunteers, even some who want to work pro bono. I'm trying to figure out how I do that. The 6 technical divisions are all led by veteran S&T members. My 3 research investment portfolio directors for research, basic research, transition, and innovation, my high risk, provide the cross-cutting coordination amongst those 6 divisions so I don't end up with stovepipes. And finally, those divisions are focused on what I believe you've mandated and the public expects are the high priority issues of explosives, things that go bang, of the nuclear radiological, that's Dr. Oxford, but we work closely together. Chem Bio, half of my budget, and it's a threat which I believe the other witnesses will indicate is as significant as the nuclear radiological threat in today's world. Command, control, and interoperability, and I know you'll ask more about that. Borders and maritime. I initially thought about that as 2 divisions, but our borders on the West Coast are sea, on the north land, sea on the southeast, and land on the southwest. 48,000 Border Patrol, 40,000 Coast Guardsmen. The synergies there are impressive. It's 1 division, but the Commandant of the Coast Guard has detailed an active duty Coast Guard captain to be my deputy director, so we're seamless. And at the end of the day, the more we can do to remove seams, the safer we'll be against the terrorists. We've established a division of human factors. Dow Chemical has a wonderful commercial today about the human element. It's hostile intent, the psychology of terrorism. These may be the light sciences, but they're critically important if we're going to defend the country. I came on board on the 10th of August. That was the day of the liquid explosives plot in England. The Brits did it right. They got the bomber. You get the bomber, you don't have to worry about the bomb. But regrettably, there may always be leakage, so we do worry about the bomb. But human factors, like command, control, and operability, cross-cut. And finally, infrastructure protection and geophysical sciences. I'm responsible, as you've noted, for all hazards, not just man-made. And so tsunamis, hurricanes, fire, flooding, earthquakes, we've got to do a better job of protecting against those. Now, there's much more I could say, but I'll reserve that for the question and answer period. I did want to note a statement that I've been making. Chairman Wu, I know I finally arrived because I'm in a blog now, last Friday, when I said that we're in crisis in science and technology in the middle schools. Kids are turning away from math and science. You know this better than I do. And Congressman Bonner, I was so pleased to see Governor Riley's State of the State address, where he devoted nearly half of his message. And we're seeing that in so many states, Kentucky, and there were hearings yesterday on the Hill. But we are in crisis. And if we don't get the kids to take the hard subjects of science and math, we will not enjoy the economic society, the technological dominance that we've enjoyed for so long. And so I compared it to the PlayStation society, or the PlayStation generation, and some people viewed that as derogatory, but I stand by those remarks, and we want instant gratification, but science and technology require much more. So we're moving forward on centers of excellence. We currently have 7. We're realigning them to be aligned with my divisions. We have broad agency announcements out for an additional 4 to meet the needs that we weren't meeting, and I'm aligning my very robust, thanks to you, scholarship and fellowship program to those centers of excellence, which currently include over 80 universities and colleges in the states, but shortly will include more than 100. This is exciting. The S&T Directorate appreciates the many demands on the taxpayers' precious dollars. We are committed to being wise stewards of those public monies that you have and will entrust to us. I appreciate the Science Committee's support. I welcome your oversight, and I will be happy to take your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary. Director Oxford.
Good morning, Chairman Wu, Ranking Member Gingrey, and other members of the panel. I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to present DNDO's research and development priorities for fiscal year 2008. I'm pleased to be here with my colleague, Undersecretary Cohen, and other colleagues from past lives that are with me also here on the panel. DNDO was chartered to develop a global nuclear detection architecture that would form a robust defensive layer to prevent nuclear and radiological terrorism. We're also asked to direct all radiation detection development programs on behalf of DHS and to work as the U.S. government collaborator with other departments regarding research and development in the Rad Nuke area. We invest in the enhancement of existing technologies through both a near-term spiral development program as well as a transformational research and development program to deliver revolutionary improvements in the performance of nuclear detection systems. Today I will highlight the near-term and transformational plans for 2008 and touch upon how DNDO coordinates its R&D activities with other federal agencies. Regarding near-term R&D priorities, we feel we must finish the work of securing our nation's ports of entries. However, we cannot ignore the possibility that a terrorist might attempt to illicitly transport a nuclear or radioactive material between the ports of entry. DNDO's near-term focus is on making further improvements to radiation detection capabilities for the nation's ports of entry, while also developing solutions for non-ports of entry threats. We're testing the Advanced Spectroscopic Portal at the Nevada Test Site and the New York Container Terminal. Results of these tests will be used to support the Secretary's certification decision as required by the 2007 Appropriations Bill. And in 2008, we will also complete development and begin production for ASP variants to include mobile truck-mounted systems as well as shuttle carrier systems that address specific challenges presented at some of our seaports that load cargo directly from ships to rail. The Cargo Advanced Automated Radiography System will automatically detect high-density shielding within cargo that it could escape the detection by our passive systems. The automated imaging processing capabilities envisioned for cars will substantially improve throughput rates over current generation radiography systems. Development of these technologies will continue in 2008 with prototypes being delivered in mid-2009. DNDO's Human Portable Radiation Detection System program will improve current and backpack radiation detection systems by improving identification capabilities, standardizing displays and controls, reducing weight, and improving system connectivity so that data can be rapidly communicated and analyzed. Within our long-term transformational research program, we include an exploratory research program, a dedicated academic research initiative, and several upcoming advanced technology demonstrations. In exploratory research, we have initiated 44 projects with our national laboratories We have recently awarded 7 cooperative agreements with academia, and next week we'll announce 10 awards with private industry. These efforts have already begun to pay off. An automated process established at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratories allows us to evaluate over 100 new detector materials per month, or over 1,000 per year, a 10-fold increase over previous capabilities within this country. Proof of concept efforts on several standoff technologies have demonstrated that very small amounts of material can be detected at 20 miles per hour from a distance of over 65 meters. Again, a tremendous improvement over previous and current capabilities. In 2008, our advanced technology demonstration programs will include an intelligent personal radiation locator that responds to a user requirement to improve upon capabilities in personal radiation devices for discrimination as well as localization of threat materials. Our standoff detection advanced technology demonstration will develop and evaluate technologies to significantly increase detection ranges out to 100 meters. The verification of shielded special nuclear material advanced technology demonstration will develop and test advanced technologies to verify the presence of special nuclear material in cluttered environments, and may lead to a human portable capability to automatically verify the presence of shielded special nuclear material. Finally, a survey of by the National Science Foundation and the Department of Energy showed a downward trend in this nation's nuclear science expertise. In 1980, there were 65 nuclear engineering departments in our U.S. universities. Today, there are 29. Currently, it is estimated that 1/3 to 3/4 of the current nuclear workforce will reach retirement age in the next 10 years. DNDO's academic research initiative will spur the academic community to provide the nuclear detection experts of the future by funding universities to conduct R&D in the areas relevant to nuclear detection. Last month, DNDO and the National Science Foundation solicited grant applications from our colleges and universities to help begin this new academic initiative. Regarding coordination with other organizations, we recognize that several federal agencies already engage in research in this area. So we have coordinated our activities with the National Nuclear Security Administration, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and the Director for National Intelligence. Several mechanisms are currently in place to ensure active coordination of these efforts. These include joint participation in the Domestic Nuclear Research and Development Working Group, chaired by the President's Science Advisor. An interagency working group is intended to create an R&D roadmap for the future. DNDO also supports Department of Energy activities by jointly reviewing proposals that come into both organizations to make sure that we're collaborating and reducing the conflict of funding. We do that also with the Department of Defense. Finally, in conclusion, let me say the challenges that lie ahead require a coordinated effort on behalf of the best scientific minds in this country, from fostering the development of revolutionary detection technologies that fill gaps in our evolving architecture to providing next-generation technologies that improve performance, cost, and operational value. DNDO is working to provide the nation with a continuously improving capability to protect against a terrorist nuclear attack. And I would, at this time, yield the rest of my time and be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Oxford. Dr. Epstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Gingrey, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Before I start, I can't help but point out that I first started studying the issues I'm going to be talking with you about this morning working for this institution in an agency that unfortunately no longer exists. I used to be with the Congressional Office of Technology Assessment and wrote a report on the same things we've been talking about. And as much as I welcome the opportunity to speak with you today, frankly, you deserve better than that. You deserve better than one hearing with individual witnesses. You need your own folks, a dedicated office working on precisely the interface of technology and policy, not just for this committee, but for practically every other committee on the Hill. So let me just commend that. I think that's a capability that could be used here on the Hill. Let me get back to what you asked me to talk about. I'd like to start off by highlighting just one or two factors I think we need to keep in mind when we address Homeland Security, science, and technology. Make a few observations along the way about the FY 2008 requests from the department, and then end up with one specific point on what has turned out to be a popular issue, that of science and technology education. Let me start with, I think, the greatest challenge we face in managing a R&D portfolio for Homeland Security, which is looking over the entire menu of risks that are in front of us and deciding what it is we actually need to spend our money on. this forces us to compare some very different threats: nuclear threats, biological threats, infrastructure, explosives, borders, cyber attack, and all this, fortunately, in the absence of much of the data you would really want to do a quantitative risk assessment. These attacks have not happened much to date. We'd like to keep it that way. But I think we need better tools, better analytic procedures, better processes to figure out how we actually make some of these high-level trade-offs. Before we say, before I spend a lot of money on this capability, which I might know how to do, what else might I be able to spend it on, and what more security could we get for that? I don't think there's going to be a magic spreadsheet that's going to come up with the right allocation among different priorities, but I do think we can have systems that are going to help make our decisions a little more transparent and highlight where it is that our gut hunches, our subjective probabilities, really are making a big difference. I'd also like to talk about the time horizon of S&T research in the Department of Homeland Security. When the department was first formed, the government had just realized it had this mission. There was not a long-standing base of work precisely on Homeland Security type issues. There were a lot of immediate needs, a lot of immediate capabilities that could fill those needs, and the decision made at the time to go for what I think has been called the low-hanging fruit, near-term research, but to defer the more basic and the longer-term investigations. That's an understandable decision at the time, but it's not sustainable. And I'm pleased to see, looking through this year's budget request, that we have a more balanced portfolio of research and development, not just near-term programs, but also longer-term programs. And I'm particularly pleased to see that we're willing to take some risk. That's essential. A serious pathology that a technology development organization can run into, especially one that has to look at emerging technological threats, is to aim too low. Secretary Cohen is going to need your help in making sure he's not running into this problem, make sure his vision is far enough. The way you'll know he's doing his job is if he can come back to you and report that he's failed. If he hasn't started some programs that just don't pan out, he's not being aggressive enough, and I think he can use your help in holding him to that. And I'd just now like to conclude on the note about the Homeland Security Science and Technology Fellows Program. This is an important program. I'm pleased that the department recognizes the importance of a strong national science and technology base, not just for the many other objectives that we draw on S&T for, but particularly for the Homeland Security mission. And the department recognizes its responsibility in replenishing the supply of human resources in this arena. But I think the program actually could probably be modified so that the fellows not only contribute in general to the U.S. science and technology base, but contribute specifically to Homeland Security missions. And this is not by making more requirements on the program, but actually getting them more excited about Homeland Security and the technology applications that they can work on that are solving our own needs. I think a deeper engagement with these fellows, they now have an orientation at the beginning of the process, and they work on an internship. I think a continuing involvement, high-level mentorships, briefing them on threats facing the nation and the different ways in which the whole Homeland Security architecture can address it, will get them excited not only about their own science and technology investigations, but about applying that to the Homeland Security mission. And again, we need S&T workforce in this country, but the Homeland Security agencies have a harder job. They've got to work with U.S. citizens. We are fortunate to have foreign nationals contribute to the technical workforce in this country, but they can't get security clearances and they can't work for the gentleman on my right. So that programs they're supporting are very important, and I think they can have a higher payoff in having them work directly for the Homeland Security sector. So I'd be glad to entertain your questions at the end of the panel.
Thank you, Dr. Epstein. Mr. Czerwinski.
Excuse me, Chairman Wu, Ranking Member Gingrey, Congressman Mitchell. My name is Jonah Czerwinski. I'm a senior fellow with IBM's Global Leadership Initiative and a managing consultant at IBM's Global Business Services. I thank you for the opportunity this morning to appear before you to highlight three things. First, IBM's dedication to supporting basic research and services science. Second, the investment priorities of the DHS Domestic Nuclear Detection Office and the importance of placing these efforts in a broader framework that protects the global flow of trade and travel. And third, matching R&D investments of the DNDO to the risk posed by covert nuclear weapons and materials. IBM spends approximately $6 billion per year on research and development, much of it on basic research. However, increasingly, IBM and others are also investing in research in emerging areas such as services, which comprise approximately 80% of the U.S. economy and account for more than 75% of IBM's corporate revenues. We believe that the national investment in basic research remains critical to foster innovation and to support our country's economic competitiveness. And we advocate that the federal government also should support research and curriculum development in the area of services science. By way of background, from 2004 through the other part of this year, I was Director of Homeland Security Projects at the Center for the Study of the Presidency, and worked with Center President David Abshire and Norm Augustine to organize the Nuclear Defense Working Group. That group provided the groundwork and rationale for the government reorganization that led to the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office. The challenge of nuclear material is its subtle radiological signature, which usually requires a detector to be both close to the suspected source and within its vicinity for enough time to gather telltale radiation. For this reason, most of the investments made in detecting smuggled nuclear weapons should support two key success factors: increasing distance between the detector and the radioactive material, and decreasing dwell time near the material itself. The DNDO budget includes funding for certain longer-term R&D commitments that show progress in these areas. For example, the development of the Advanced Standoff Detection Program that Mr. Oxford described could become a game-changing capability. This research may deliver faster detection at a greater distance. In the end, investments like these must not only protect the public and the nation's critical assets, but do so without harming the flow of trade and travel. Congress must view the effort to combat the smuggled nuclear weapons threat as one of several interlocking objectives, many of which should benefit from our R&D investments. Doing so requires a framework that connects the search for the search for nuclear materials to the broader goal of protecting the flows of cargo, people, and conveyances in the global trade and travel system. The DNDO should figure prominently in this mission. Ultimately, Homeland Security R&D investments should support the broader objective of bringing efficiency, security, and resilience to one of the most attractive targets of WMD terrorism, the flow of global trade and travel. IBM has developed a means by which today's Homeland Security imperatives can reinforce both efficiency and security in the global movement of cargo, people, information, and finance. We call this framework Global Movement Management. It adds resilience to this critical system of movement without imposing inefficiencies that risk outweighing the security benefits to the numerous stakeholders that use these systems of trade and travel. The country needs a strategic framework, like you mentioned, to overarch our R&D investments for maximum benefit to both our Homeland Security interests and our economic competitiveness. The strategic framework is lacking today. Nevertheless, DNDO has chosen successfully several important pilots, including those I mentioned in my written statement. This leads me to my final point. Mr. Chairman, you asked specifically about the role of risk assessments in identifying the best use of our R&D investments in this area. When the DNDO first was created, it was understood by its authors that as the threat of nuclear terrorism and proliferation would evolve, America's relevant technological base would evolve, and would other significant international factors, such as the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was therefore critical that as a hub for national efforts to combat the smuggling of nuclear material, the DNDO began with a net assessment of the nation's capabilities matched against a current snapshot of the threat. The DNDO's global nuclear detection architecture is based on that assessment. It includes guidance on how best to operate the nuclear detection assets and authorities, as well as a clear list of gaps in America's nuclear detection efforts. Those gaps lead to DNDO's list of investment priorities. I would recommend giving special attention to the methodology and makeup of the global nuclear detection architecture to better illustrate the connection between risk and the DNDO's budget. Ultimately, these individual investments can serve a greater goal of resilience, security, and efficiency. The DNDO and the executive branch as a whole should be measured by the ability of their R&D investments to do just that. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Czerwinski. Ms. Ward.
Chairman Wu, Ranking Member Gingrey, and the members of the subcommittee, on behalf of the National Public Safety Telecommunications Council, referred to as NPSTC, it is a privilege to appear before the subcommittee in its examination of the Department of Homeland Security's research and development activities. We commend the subcommittee's work in this area. NPSTC's mission is devoted to improving the communications capabilities of local and state public safety agencies. NPSTC was created in 1997 as a volunteer federation of 13 national public safety associations. Our efforts are focused on the technological capability and the capacity of radio communications and the coordination of these resources throughout all agencies. The following are just a few examples of what NPSTC does. We provide the DHF SAFECOM program local and state public safety input to its science and technology, research, development, and standard efforts. NPSTC critically examines technical and regulatory implications regarding radio spectrum utilization and management. NPSTC provides comments to the FCC on critical public safety issues representing over 250,000 public safety responders. NPSTC provides an open forum for discussion and dispute resolution on public safety communications issues. My testimony today focuses on the DHS science and technology role in furthering public safety communications. Through its Executive Committee, Emergency Response Committee, and organizations like NPSTC, SAFECOM is developing a national plan to enhance interoperability. We believe the focus on new and innovative technology today is found in broadband. The challenge is that public safety spectrum is currently not available for a nationwide broadband network that is controlled by and built to public safety standards and requirements. The recent testimony of Chief Harlan McEwen from IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and Chief Charles Warner, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, to the Senate Commerce Committee is supported by all of the major public safety associations, including NPSTC, and it is attached to my written testimony. The public safety community is concerned that there was considerable reduction in the 2007 budget and that the newly created Office of Emergency Communications was left unfunded. Agencies transferring portions of their budgets to fund DHS OEC is time-consuming. It creates tension among agencies and causes confusion and uncertainty for the state and local community. DHS SAFECOM has pursued development of regional radio systems by soliciting participation using a bottom-up strategy. Although this takes time, it is a critical element and must be completed. In addition to the tools and critical studies SAFECOM develops, they also test, evaluate technologies, conduct pilot programs, and are funding a compliance lab. None of these have adequate resources. Although not directly involved with the department's planning and priority mechanisms, we do not see projects and programs based on long-term solutions to the problems that we face in communications. The budgets at the federal level fluctuate and are not sustained in a manner that is conducive to long-term solutions. DHS SAFECOM, along with their partners at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Office of Law Enforcement Standards, and the National Telecommunications and Information Agency, Institute for Telecommunication Sciences, are currently testing the current public safety standard commonly referred to as P25. This is an especially important requirement because many of the state and local agencies, as well as the Department of Defense and other federal agencies, are using P25 equipment. Through the SAFECOM program, NPSTC has been involved with the NIST-OLAS for many years, such as in the development and review of the SAFECOM Statement of Requirement for Public Safety Communications Technology. Another example of our collaboration occurred last month when NPSTC worked with NTIA, ITS, and Boulder to develop requirements for broadband technologies. Through this collaboration, the original input of 57 practitioners was expanded to 627 who provided input to the project. I would also like to ask that this subcommittee review our comments on the progress made regarding the recommendations of the September 2004 GAO report on interoperability, which is provided in my written testimony. In closing, there are two issues the subcommittee and Congress should consider. First, fluctuations in funding for communications interoperability deters progress. 3 to 5 year funding estimates would provide stability for long-term programs and strategies and would result in considerably more improvements. The second issue we would like you to consider is the proposal to permit the creation of a public safety broadband trust in the 700 megahertz and reallocating 30 megahertz of spectrum to public safety that is scheduled to be auctioned. We urge members to examine this issue very closely. It would make a positive and important contribution to public safety communications. Thank you again for the invitation to appear before this committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ward. We open the first round of questions, and the chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Undersecretary Cohen, the S&T Directorate, well, I understand that y'all are working on a strategic plan, and I'd like to ask you about the status of the development of the strategic plan and to the extent to which a formal risk assessment will play a role in your strategic planning.
Yes, yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, as I've previously testified this year to the Homeland Security Committee, I owe the Congress two strategic plans. One is for the Directorate itself, and that will be risk-informed and customer-focused. And some of the other panel members here have already discussed the importance of that. I've committed to the Congress that you will have that by June of this year. The second that I owe was mandated by the enabling legislation. This is a much broader strategic plan, and it recognizes the wisdom of the enabling legislation, where you did not want me to recreate the National Institute of Health, did not want me to recreate the DOE or DOE labs, you did not want me to recreate the National Science Foundation, but you did give me a preeminent position to go ahead and leverage those tens of billions of dollars of research where those other agencies and departments of government must share with me the results of that critical research so that I can take my precious investment and focus those results on Homeland Security requirements and needs. That government-wide strategic plan was in preparation apparently for about 2 years. Because the approach it took, and I have reviewed it myself in draft form, was more perceived by the other departments and agencies as mandating what they would do for Homeland Security as to how they, through their efforts, could contribute to Homeland Security. I think I had a very difficult time coming to fruition. I commit by the end of this fiscal year, I will have to the administration that strategic plan that is a partnership across government for them then to provide to the Congress.
Mr. Undersecretary, what I heard you to say is that the first strategic plan that you're going to be working out is going to be informed by a, shall we say, less formal risk analysis. Do you have some plan at this point or at some point in the future to do a more systematic, formal risk analysis to inform the research priorities of DHS?
Yes, sir, and in fact that is in place right now. The reorganization that I put in place where the majority of my budget goes in an integrated product team to the customer, whether that's Border Patrol, Coast Guard, cybersecurity, or infrastructure protection with the National Infrastructure Plan, each of those customers does a risk-based analysis to determine what capabilities they need to fulfill their Homeland Security mission. Now, you wisely gave us the Homeland Security Institute. In the short time I've been on board, I have reoriented them to bring operations research, operations analysis, and make Homeland Security Institute the risk-based analysis determiner for all of my 22 customers. So when I sit down in an integrated product team and my division director, along with the customer and the acquisition provider, we have 11 capstone IPTs. You see the capabilities they're trying to provide. The customer working with us then prioritizes what they need to do their job based on the risk as they see it. We then commit through a technology agreement in writing where they hold me to cost, schedule, and capability metrics to provide the enablers for their people, process, and product, because that's how they do their job. On a bigger scale,
Mr. Undersecretary, because my time is expiring.
On a bigger scale, I'll answer your question directly. I've sat down with the National Academies of Science because, and the other members may feel differently here, the science of risk is not well known, and I've asked the National Academies to work with me so I can fund how we can better determine risk for the issues that have been raised here.
Thank you very much for focusing on that part of the question. With the forbearance of the ranking member, a few seconds after my time has expired, since you have brought up this chart, I wanted to ask you about the IPT. I think it's terrific that the different federal agencies have been pulled together in this. I have to say that there have been concerns expressed, perhaps some complaints, that some of the end users, and you refer to them in your testimony, and the first responders, that some of their needs in terms of usability, in terms of maintenance, their ability to withstand challenges in the field and prioritization of devices and threats, that has not been paid sufficient close attention to, shall we say, and that a specific example would be the what many of us would consider, shoulder-fired anti-air missiles in this town, man-pads, man-portable air defense systems. That the system that was developed is roughly $1 million a copy. The folks would be responsible for purchasing them and maintaining them are reluctant to make that investment. Do we have a problem here with a lack of linkage with the ultimate user?
I will give a concise answer. Yes, this is an area that I am very much focused on. The enabling legislation not only made me the head of the S&T Directorate, but you made me the test and evaluation executive for the entire department, and you put standards, not just interoperability, but all standards under me for the entire department. In the IPT process, you can see the bottom of each diamond has the customer, the guardsman, fill in the blank.
Well, above the line, those are solid lines. That's a dotted line down below, and I
yes, sir. Because S&T is like the BASF commercial you see every Sunday morning. I don't make the widget. I make the widget better. My other panel members have already noted, S&T for S&T's sake does not satisfy the customer, nor does it reduce the risk to this country. And so what I have done, in some cases, because they're internal to DHS, I've mandated, because it's my process, the customer be there. But I'm not going to tell the Commandant of the Coast Guard, and I'm not going to tell the Cyber Czar, etc. I've provided for the customer to be at the table. We've also established, and it's operating and running, Tech Solutions, a website, something I did in Navy, where first responders themselves can come to my website with recommendations or gaps that they believe exist because they live it every day and they're smart people. In Navy, I had a sailor who came in from the Persian Gulf on a carrier who asked for a degreasing Zamboni, 4.5 acres. It wasn't quite S&T, but we provided it using our laboratories, and that sailor I don't think ever bought another beer in his life. We're going to do the same, and I'm committed to our first responders. But this is a work in progress, and I look forward to improving it as we go forward. But T&E, you are right, and we've got to do a better job, and I believe we're organized to do that now, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Undersecretary. Dr. Gingrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Undersecretary, Admiral Cohen, I had mentioned in my opening statement, very difficult task to assess and prioritize the various threats that our nation faces. In that vein, I'm interested in hearing more about this biotech, BioWatch program, I guess it's called BioWatch. Can you give us the history of the program, its various successes, and some of the struggles, and what you see as the future of BioWatch? My understanding, it's a program that can play an effective and efficient role in securing our country, but there's been some problems. So, if you would talk to us about BioWatch.
Yes, sir, Congressman. I'm a big fan of BioWatch. In fact, Rita Colwell, Dr. Colwell, when she was director of the National Science Foundation in the summer of 2001, came to me as Chief of Naval Research and proposed a cooperative program, Army, DOD, with her for something very similar to this, so that in our main cities, we would put in place sensors that would monitor for various pathogens. Because we didn't have a database, how that varied diurnally, with season, what the false alarms were, weather conditions, etc. It didn't gain traction, and then we had 9/11, and then the stand-up of the Department of Homeland Security. On the broader issue, in terms of the priorities and risk, what I basically inherited was Dr. Oxford has about a third of the S&T budget for nuclear radiological. ChemBio has about a third of the budget. Those are the two obvious, clearly defined major threats, and all the other threats share about a third of the budget. Is that right or wrong? I don't know. That is follow the money. The BioWatch program was established about 4 years ago. It was intended to do what Rita proposed. I don't know that they knew she proposed it, but it was to go in about 30 of our major cities using current technologies with fixed stations to monitor pathogens that we have the technology to do. And it's analog in nature. You know from your background, we draw the air through pads, then we collect it weekly, we then go to the lab and do a detailed analysis. It has been highly successful. It works. We've taken over 3 million samples, of which we have gotten 15, that's 15, positive results, all of them verified, but all due to natural, not terrorist causes. In fact, 2 months ago, when the stink bomb engulfed Manhattan, and we didn't know what it was, smelled like hydrogen sulfide, Mayor Giuliani, I understand, was able in the first hour to go, Mayor Bloomberg was able in the first hour to go before the good people of New York City and say they didn't know what caused it, but it was not a threat. That statement was in part enabled by the BioWatch sensors in New York. We have now, in Department of Homeland Security, working in conjunction with the Congress, through the last year, established the Office of Health Affairs. That's headed by our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Runge. Dr. Runge filled in for me over the last 6 months before I came on board S&T, and we work very closely together. This is an area where S&T didn't have a customer in DHS. Now I have a customer. And so my budget this year reflects a one-time transfer of approximately $80 million to Dr. Runge and the Office of Health Affairs, because that's what it costs to operate BioWatch 2, which is an operation. Now, we will continue to do S&T to improve that system, but with Dr. Vitko and the rest of my ChemBio division, we're leaping ahead. We're leaping ahead to BioWatch 3. This brings the current digital technologies, the microchips, that will allow us, we believe, when fielded, and we hope to have it fielded within the next 3 to 4 years, the ability to have real-time monitoring coupled with wireless, and hopefully, because it's 1/4 the cost to operate, 4 times the sensors in many more cities, so that...
I know my time is running out, Admiral, but in the remaining few seconds, tell us some of the particular things that you would be monitoring for that the general public would be aware of, things like sarin gas as an example, or anthrax, or something that we read about, fortunately, on common occasion, but it scares the bejesus out of everybody. Tell us some of the things that you're watching for in these 30 cities.
Yes, sir. I will leave it very limited in this forum, because you're aware that we did put out earlier, or late last year, a major threat determination on 30 different pathogens using a very detailed risk determination of probability of occurrence times consequence of occurrence. But it's safe to say that anthrax, botulism, some of the more common diseases that could be pandemic are monitored for.
they are part of that watch.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll look forward to the second round.
Thank you, Dr. Gingrey. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Chairman Wu. Mr. Undersecretary, much of the Secure Borders Initiative systems, the development has been completed by S&T. How have you ensured that the Secure Borders Initiative has responded to the needs of Customs and Border Patrol agents along the southwest border?
Well, Congressman, the borders are clearly very important to us, and it has been a major S&T initiative. Secretary Chertoff has testified numerous times that the current contract for the SBI net went with proven technology so that it could be fielded in a timely manner. I know you're well aware of this because of the towers and the other aspects that are being deployed in Arizona and other southwest borders. In our integrated product team, which you see border security, both the Customs and Border Protection and ICE are my chairman. And it is Chief Aguilar himself who sits at that table with my Border and Maritime Merv Levitt director. And it is Chief Aguilar and ICE who tell us what they need to make the borders better. We slave it to that. Now these, Congressman, are incremental improvements. These are spiral development. Maybe we can move the towers from 5-mile spacing to 7.5-mile spacing, but with the same fidelity to ensure the safety of the border. And we're doing that. I'm invested in that. But in my high-risk portfolio, where Dr. Epstein talked about the need to take risk and fail, we have several programs. Tunnel vision, tunnel detection. No one has been able to do this in a timely manner. We're going to risk, we may fail, but in fact, and I think you know him from Tucson, Tony Mulligan and Advanced Ceramics is proposing using Silver Fox, a small 24-pound unmanned aerial vehicle, and using, I'm not going to give the technology, but fly that along the border to see if we can detect tunnels down to several hundred feet. Will it work? I don't know. Stay tuned. But I get to do that. We're also using persistent surveillance. These are 24-hour, high-end UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. We're using them for several reasons. One, as counter-manned pads. As the chairman said, the airlines are not high on the cost or the maintenance or the impact of counter-manned pads on their aircraft. So we're looking to use a 65,000-foot decoy to take the manned pads away from the aircraft. But this same decoy can be used with state-of-the-art day-night video to give us persistent surveillance as we have overseas in war on our borders for our Border Patrol. And it can also be used as a bounce link to have secure communications, reliable communications in that last mile for our disenfranchised first responders. I know your time is short. What I'm telling you is we're taking the low risk and the high risk at the same time to make the borders more secure.
Thank you. Just one follow-up. Has the Border Patrol expressed the need for any research and development that's not been completed yet?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I liked, please put that up, about this integrated product team process, and I learned this in Navy, this is not new, is when you have the customer at the table, they always have, I know it's hard for Congress to believe, always have more requirements than we have money or technology to fill. And so we asked the customer to prioritize. Now here you're seeing my human factors, my people screening. In the upper left, that's what I'm funding. These are all prioritized. In the lower right, I'm funding for those in the out years. It goes to the issue that was raised by Ms. Ward. I'm doing 6-year funding, and I'm showing OMB, and I'm showing the Hill how we're sequentially going to invest. And as more money becomes available, those items below the cut line, put there by Chief Aguilar, get raised because I can do them. But the ones that we're doing in 0 to 3 years, when they're delivered, I reinvest that money in the items below the line, and they naturally move up over the 6-year budget period.
One last quick follow-up. How has there's a proposed cut in the Border and Maritime Division of about 7.5%. How will this cut affect the research that's being done there?
Congressman, in going to the new organizational construct, I have basic research, which I'm growing. It was at 5%. My goal in my tenure is to get it to 20% for the reasons you heard Dr. Epstein address. 50% of my budget goes to the integrated product team, the immediate improvement for my 22 customers. But 10% goes to innovation. It's the high-risk portfolio. So what I've done with Merv Levitt and with the Commandant is we've taken some of the monies that were in what we call on research, no defined customer, and we now have Merv Levitt in Borders and Maritime with a defined customer requirement and the high risk. And so what I've done is it's been an internal transfer of money from that division to my innovation portfolio. But the monies are fundamentally the same, sir. Just differences in risk and time to delivery.
Thank you. I'll give you my time.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Now, my good friend from Texas, Mr. Hall, the ranking member of the full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that I probably want to start off, Admiral, by thanking you for all the wonderful work you've done, not just for this committee and for this thrust, but for this country. I know your background. You a graduate of the Naval Academy. I never could have got in there, much less getting out. You MIT, you were Navy Congressional Liaison. You've done it all, and I don't know of anybody more qualified for what you're doing and doing it right than anybody under the Capitol Dome, and I want to thank you for that. We're lucky to have you. I have a question for you and for Mr. Oxford, and I guess maybe it's general, but just what tools and what procedures are available through your offices to help state and local governments, the people at the bottom, to help them assess and address their own vulnerabilities to natural and to man-made disasters, and how can interested communities interface with expertise that's housed in DHS, and how do you get it from your mind down to their mind and to help us defend that they're obligated to defend just like you are at the top? Could you give me something like that in the last 3 minutes I have?
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your very kind words, but I also want to thank you for your long and dedicated service, and especially your focus on science and education. I'd like to remind you that our greatest admiral, Admiral Nimitz, was a Texan from Fredericksburg, and my only regret in life is that I'm not a Longhorn.
I was a JG when I served under him. I didn't get any closer than 100 yards of him, but I sure did admire him.
Yes, sir. I'm going to give you a fairly succinct answer. The first responders and the communities are not at the bottom in my book. They're at the top, and I exist to fulfill and serve their requirements. We have many, many ways to do that. I briefed the Tech Solutions website, which I put online, where they can come in directly. I've established in my organization very lean agency, because my responsibilities run throughout all federal government and also international. I was going to have an association, because I have to deal with the sheriff of Mayberry, and I have to deal with the New York City Police Department, and I have to deal with the tribal firemen, and I have to deal with the Chicago Fire Department. That scale is very difficult for me. But as Ms. Ward has indicated, this is the role of the associations. We in Homeland Security have, in the department, not in my directorate, and I think that's appropriate, groups that reach out to private industry, groups that reach out to associations, sit down with them. They then pass those needs to me. But as I said in my confirmation, my door is always open. At the end of the day, the 22 components and agencies, Border Patrol, Coast Guard, who live in those communities, they bring to me their requirements tailored for those communities. This is a very difficult issue. We've got 35,000 fire departments, of which 80% are volunteer. This is how America works. This is the beauty, but also the challenge of America. It's a new department. It's a work in progress. I do think we're getting wind under our wings, though, sir.
Are you actually in touch with these folks? Do they know a number that they can call? Do they know how to call for help if they see something that concerns them?
I would say that some do. I would say the majority don't. I would tell you that I'm not proud of the Homeland Security Department website.
But if I know you, you're working on it.
I am, you bet. Yes, sir.
And thank you for that. Thank every one of you for not just being here today, but for how you got here today. And I made this statement before. I would have known all of you and would have admired you, but I wouldn't have liked any of you because you're the very people that ruined the curve for guys like me in college. But I thank you for your participation, and I thank you for what you're doing for this country, all of you. I yield back, Chairman Wu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. And the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral, I also appreciate your service. Unlike my friend, the ranking member from Texas, who has Texas has somewhat of a tradition with the Navy, with Admiral Nimitz. I'm afraid Kentucky's historic association with the Navy is not that great, despite our enormous coastline.
With Ohio, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's right. The Ohio Ocean. Mr. Secretary, I'm interested in a proposed cut in the budget request having to do with the University Centers of Excellence. I noticed that the FY 2006 number was $62 million. 2007 enacted $48 million. Now the suggestion is down to $38 million. And in addition to what is a fairly substantial cut, there, as I understand it, is also a proposal to spread that money over more universities. Could you give me some indication as to the thinking there, and will the money, when it's watered down in that way, or less to each place, will that yield as strong a result as you've been getting from those programs?
Yes, sir, and you'll never hear me say less is more. This is something I testified to 2 weeks ago with the Homeland Security Committee. You may remember when I came on board last August, there was some less than complimentary language in the pending congressional legislation about my directorate, and more specifically about the Centers of Excellence. Working with both sides of the aisle and both houses, authorizers and appropriators, we were able to find a solution. But for the Centers of Excellence, draconian measures were about to be taken because of the perceived underperformance as they were organized prior to my arrival. The legislation that came out, I'm very thankful for. It required me to come back to the appropriators, both House and Senate, within 60 days of enactment, which I did on the 58th day. Chairman, I can meet some schedules, and explain how we were going forward. With my new organizational construct that has 6 divisions and 3 investment areas of basic research, product transition, and high-risk innovation, everything is aligned to explosives, chem bio, command control interoperability, to borders maritime, to human factors, and infrastructure and geophysical sciences. That's how I do business, overlaid by matrix portfolio directors, so we don't have stovepipes. In September of last year, I sat down with all the directors of the existing 7 COEs and asked them to align with one or more division so I could justify their existence in the basic research. They immediately did that, and I'm very proud of that. But at the same time, the Congress advised me, and I looked at my own 6 divisions. If we've got the vertical, yeah. Would you turn that for the Congressman, please, just so we can see it better? I had 2 divisions that were lacking any centers of excellence, and they were critically important: explosives. And so today I have 4 broad agency announcements, competitive in nature, to fill those areas that I knew the Congress wanted me to do, and we've consolidated. On the administration side, the administration and the department and OMB, looking at that pending legislation, which would have decimated the COEs, went ahead and removed as part of the budget development a majority of that funding. That was unacceptable to me. And so I was working, as I said in testimony, a 2-front battle. On one hand, I had the Congress telling the administration they're going to do away with it, and on the other hand, I had the administration saying, not even the Congress values this. I was able to buy back, as you can see, 80% of what I had the previous year. With this new alignment, I guarantee you, and I use that word rarely, that with the product you will see coming out of basic research, the universities and the associated laboratories, including Silicon Hala, which we're very pleased to be involved with, I believe you will see the administration will understand the value of this, its dual use, and we will grow that budget.
Thank you, Admiral. It sounds like you put a lot of thought into this. So you got, what you're saying is you got what you could get by what appears to be a lot of hard work.
Yes, sir.
And thoughtful presentation.
You're much more succinct than I am.
I've got one other question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and this is, I think, better answered by Dr. Epstein, possibly. The S&T Directorate seems to have a strong focus on biological threats that are human-caused, things like anthrax, smallpox, that sort of thing. Do you think that this, and I understand how important those are, is this, in your view, the main priority, or should the priority, or should we be, are we doing enough? Let me ask it that way. Are we doing enough to prepare for natural threats, naturally occurring threats, for instance, the avian flu?
I think I will echo Secretary Cohen's response that we're never doing enough. There's a lot of threats out there. One challenge with this particular question is that natural threats, well, let me back. There's 2 different cabinet departments involved, and so part of the challenge is not just determining how much money needs to go to it, but what's the relative role of the 2 departments. And the point I make here is that there is no correct way to make that boundary. These are both, at least on the bioterrorism side, a bioterrorist attack is an intentional attack, and it's a disease. You've got one cabinet department that worries about disease, you've got another one that worries about intentional attacks, and they will both have to be involved. I think it is appropriate that the bioterror focus that the Department of Science and Technology, Homeland Security has, is there. I think it's appropriate that's their largest program. When one looks out into the future and says, all the ways that technology can be abused by folks who have ill intent, what are the capabilities that might put the most power in the hands of the smallest groups in the most places? Biological weapons are certainly one that is a serious problem. No matter how serious one thinks it is today, it's not getting any better in the future. The pandemic natural disease problem, again, it's something that we have to expect we will see. Parts of the government are mobilized to do it, and it's hard to give a short answer as to whether we have the right balance. I think they're both important. I think they both are getting attention, and we just need to keep our eyes open for that.
Thank you very much. The gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. When I asked the Admiral the questions that I asked a few moments ago, I noticed Ms. Ward gave me an eyebrow there, and I want to follow up with her and leave a little enough time for Mr. Oxford maybe to tag on to it too, because I asked those 2 the question, but I think you probably have more real experience at the level that I'm talking about, because I know in your background that you've been in the trenches at the local level, and you were in the city management business for the city of Orlando. Probably I was stationed there in 1943 at Daytona Beach, and drive over to Orlando the magnificent growth at that time. You were
Thank
part
you.
of that. And city managers are kind of like tail gunners. They're usually removed after each mission, and if you survived that, you had a lot of good experience there. I want to ask
Changed a
you
lot.
to help us with that. I note that you were task force leader, you were coordinator of a regional area, and you've been early days in public safety. Now, for a little community like Blackland or Munson in my home county, I live in the smallest county in Texas of 254 counties, and we'd be a great one to test to see how far really what the Admiral's working 23 hours a day on reaches us. Give me some ideas as to how I can tell folks there that I see day in and day out, that I go to church with and see on the streets, how they could benefit from what all five of you are doing.
I was very happy to hear the Admiral acknowledge the fact that some of the local people probably don't know what's going on, because that's a very true statement. That's one of the benefits of the group that I belong to, and I had not seen the Tech Solutions website, and will be happy to provide outreach to the membership and their members so that they'll know that that's available. That is one of the hardest things that we deal with, is getting back down to the trenches.
Just the figures, the numbers alone just are stultifying.
And that's actually the value of our group, the NPSTC
Yes.
group. Our associations represent all of these people, so what we end up working with SAFECOM on goes back into our associations and then is funneled down to the lowest level, including the volunteer fire departments that were referenced earlier. That's why we're hoping that this esteemed group will see the value of what we do with the SAFECOM group, take into consideration the 9/11 Commission's recommendation. Secretary Chertoff has also said that interoperability is going to be one of the major issues to get resolved, and kind of not dilute the message that we in our mission by changing the personality of SAFECOM, because those people that work in your community, the public safety people, the only way they're going to be able to get reached is through some mechanism where the state and local people have input into what is going on here in Washington. And I'll tell you, I come from local government. I would never have any funding to be sitting in this chair from the Orange County where I worked, or the city of Orlando, if it was not for the associations that were supporting me to be here. So that's a major issue that this committee and Congress in general, I hope, will take into consideration, that you have to find a means to be able to get local and state participation, and the means is through the associations and through supporting groups like ours that bring associations together.
And the means are green, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
And that's where we're supposed to come in.
That's right.
Mr. Oxford, if I have a minute or so left, do you want to add to that?
Yes, sir. First of all, I want to point out that when we stood up my office, we acknowledged the need to have an aggressive dialogue at the state and local level. I have an office director for state and local affairs that reports directly to me. Since that first day, we have had an aggressive outreach through a series of workshops at the state and local level. Just a month ago, we had a series of telephone conferences that engaged 34 separate states, about 150 people, starting with Homeland Security advisors on down, to talk to them about the threat, about the problem, the things they could bring to this table. In concert with that, we have done specific commercial off-the-shelf testing for state and local people that are interested in acquiring radiation detection equipment. We then post those results on the first responder knowledge base, so they all have access to the test results so they can make these acquisitions in an informed way. As they acquire this equipment, we also have established a training program where we write the curricula for how to use these devices. Using grants and training funding, then we're allowing delivery at the state and local level to the people using the equipment, so they know how to do that. In a like manner, we have set up a series of pilot programs in the southeast and in the northeast. We've established regional technical support laboratories, so if they have an alarm, they have someone they can call to get the alarm resolved. They can also call my Joint Analysis Center directly to understand what to do with the alarm information that they have. So we've had an aggressive program. I have a director for operations who is a senior FBI agent. He is working now with all the JTTFs as well as all the fusion centers that are evolving across the country to bring our relevance to each of those states. So we could talk a lot more in detail later, but we've had an aggressive state and local outreach.
Well, I thank you for that. Information is a wonderful thing, and I've noticed so many times at the local level that, for example, a lot of times you don't even fix a bad bridge till a teenager gets killed there, and then that brings it to your attention, and why haven't you done it before, and when did you know the bridge was bad? We're going through that with the hospital out here about 100 miles from here right today at the federal level. Information is really great, and you all have a major job of making that information, sifting it down to the local level to where they can use it and have it available if it's there, and I thank you for it. I yield back, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. Pardon me. I want to apologize first to the three other witnesses. I intend to bring you in right now, in a moment, to address the risk assessment issues, which the Undersecretary talked about during my first round of questions. But before I do that, Dr. Oxford, I heard the Undersecretary refer to you as Dr. Oxford, and if this subcommittee has deprived you of a PhD, I deeply apologize. And let me just refer to you as Director Oxford. And the question I have for you is that in your testimony, you've referred to a research agenda that is at least in part driven by end user requirements. However, specifically with respect to the Securing the Cities initiative, there have been publicized reports, the New York Times among others, that DNDO is not addressing the cost and maintenance and other requirements of local governments who will ultimately be responsible for paying for the equipment, its operations and maintenance. Is there a formal structure for the ultimate end users to have their say in the technologies that you are not only developing but apparently deploying in the Protecting the Cities initiative?
Well, thank you for both those questions, and with the absence of the ranking member, I will say that I am Mr. or Director, and I work for a living, so I never went on to the other academic pursuits. But I take those as accolades. We have a very aggressive program with the New York City officials. This is a developer-user combination. My counterpart in New York is the Deputy Commissioner for Counterterrorism, as designated by the actual police commissioner in New York. Mayor Bloomberg has delegated the radiation detection issue to Ray Kelly, the police commissioner. He in turn has delegated this to his counterterrorism deputy commissioner. He has formulated a structure within the New York region of bringing together all the major entities that exist within New York City, as well as New York State, New Jersey, and Connecticut at this point in time. They have veto authority on any potential deployments that we have to that region. This is an active dialogue where we are building a deployment architecture that will be predicated on system capability as well as their ability to actually operationally respond to any alarms. We can't just have detectors in place that have alarms that they do not have the operational capacity to respond to. So it is a strong mutual dialogue, them having veto authority over any potential deployments that we might make, as well as they will observe any testing that we do on the systems to make sure they work in the capacity of how they want them to work within the city before we deploy.
Well, Director Oxford, veto authority is great, but one hopes to develop the technology that everyone can use rather than having a veto so that it's not deployed. As we turn to the other three witnesses, I'm going to cite a few numbers here, and we did this quickly, and this is, I only gave the staff a few hours to pull this together, and this is down and dirty. As the speaker said in a meeting last night, in her time on the Intel Committee, the plural of anecdote is not data, but this is slightly better than anecdote and not as thorough as a real risk assessment. According to the numbers that we pulled together, computer consulting firms estimated the total economic loss of all forms from cyber attack in 2003 was $226 billion. I'll skip a number of these other related statistics. That the insurance industry estimates that financial losses due to a tsunami could be up to $100 billion. That weather-related losses between 1980 and 2005 in the United States alone, according to NOAA, is over $500 billion. And I will skip the numbers pertaining to deaths from explosives as opposed to other causes in human caused incidents. But I am deeply concerned about the proper integration of formal risk analysis, and we understand that there are some challenges there with good solid risk analysis. But I would like our, if you will, outside witnesses to talk with me a little bit about this and how we could better integrate the risks that we face with the research that we're doing so that we properly face the threats of the future.
Any of us just jump in?
Why don't we start with you, Dr. Epstein?
Yeah, you got your finger on a terribly important problem, and it's a terribly hard one. Let me back up a little bit. Much of the methodology we have to make this kind of calculation today comes from looking at engineered systems. We have a whole science of nuclear reactor accidents, probability risk assessment. What's the probability this valve will fail, this pipe will burst? Another branch that we're drawing from is sort of looking at infectious disease, natural occurring incidents, weather, things where we have a database, things where we have statistics, things where nature isn't going to change what it does because we do something. We've got a very different problem here, looking at the intentional threat. We've got adversaries that are looking not only at what we're doing and where we're weak, they may look at the output of our risk assessment, which says we think risk A is high, we think risk B is low, and they may hit us on risk B. So in principle, this is a much more difficult job than anything that has looked like risk assessment or probabilistic analysis before. And my comments on the field are not so much that I think there's a lot of things we need to do to figure out how to handle the problem. It may be cautionary that it's a terribly important question, and there may be fundamental limits on what analysis will tell us. So the type of approach I like to see is structures that help guide our thinking. We will never know what the right number is for the probability of a terrorist attack, let's say. But we have to have a system where if I think it's high, I jack it up. If I think it's low, I jack it down. And I get to see what happens on other parts of my portfolio. I do think we have the right institutions involved. If the National Academy of Sciences is gearing up to look at what is the state of science in the field, they have the ability to tap those people in the academic community. The Homeland Security Institute that Secretary Cohen mentioned was created by suggested by Act of Congress, created by DHS, with these specific types of questions in mind. If that power can be devoted to looking at these questions, then we've got the right analytic skills and the ability to draw on the people who, if there's an answer there, one would hope that they're able to come to it. But my basic point is this is a very different question than what we've been trying to do in the past when we've been doing things that sound similar.
Thank you, Dr. Epstein. For the next two witnesses, and my apologies to the panel in general, those bells and whistles that you all have been hearing, I mean, it could be worse, the ship could be sinking, but we've just been called to a vote, and that was a few minutes ago. We have about 5 minutes left for the vote. So if you all could try to make your comments in about a minute or so, that would be deeply appreciated. Mr. Czerwinski.
I'll be brief. Let me just try and reframe the issue in this way. Risk is different in Homeland Security than it is in anywhere else. The reason for that is that what is at risk is just about everything. If you think about what the DoD has to, what the Defense Department has to worry about in terms of pursuing its objectives, it worries about its own combatants, it worries about non-combatants, and it worries about the enemy. Well, in Homeland Security, we're worried about everything else. The global economy is a part of the equation, so we have to look at this in such a way where we can't just say, risk is this. We've got vulnerabilities and we've got threats against us, so now we have risk. Instead, we have to take a look at a much broader picture at the impact of the certain A, B, or C level types of vulnerabilities that Dr. Epstein was talking about and say, what would be the consequences on these? That's really where risk comes out. The impact of certain attacks is one thing, but also the impact of the measures we use against those attacks. An overreaction, in Homeland Security by the U.S. government could be even worse than the actual attack itself, and we've seen this in the past. What IBM has been doing now for a few years is actually modeling and simulation exercises that show what these sort of impacts might be, the reactions and the impact of those as well in certain cases of pandemics. But now we're looking at one in terms of global trade and travel flows as well. So we can go into this at another time, but I would just suggest broadening the picture in that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is an interesting question for someone who represents first responders. We respond as things happen immediately. Our risk assessment comes through different groups, like in Florida. I was on the Regional Domestic Security Task Force, where we brought in different entities and different agencies to talk with us about how our ports. I found this discussion today quite interesting because those are some of the same things that we were dealing with on the local level. Our first responders are reactionary. We have to wait till the phone rings, basically telling us to go to a 911 call. We have to look at our crime stats or our fire stats to do fire prevention. So we're not in the same role as some of my co-panelists. But I will tell you that in our work with these other entities, one of the number one priorities for us is that we can talk to them. So I'll come back to the interoperability discussion and just kind of wind up by hoping that this committee will look at the value of the first responders. They're the first ones on the scene long before any assistance comes from the state or federal level, and these are the people that we need to take care of. And our interest in interoperability is taking care of them so that they'll be able to talk to each other and ask for help when they need it. So we would ask that you look at our groups, look at our associations, and look to supporting our programs that allow us to have input into the federal level.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ward. Thank you for your work. Thank you all for your fine work. This committee looks forward to working together with all of you over time to improve the processes at which we can best identify threats to our nation and to ameliorate them as best as possible. Perhaps there were those, Mr. Czerwinski, you hit on the point that our national defense is focused on one set of issues, whereas Homeland Defense is focused on so many more. Perhaps there were those who predicted, or at least said it was possible for a Japanese military strike at Pearl Harbor in 1941. Maybe yes, maybe no. I haven't looked at the history closely enough to know that. I know that through all the time that I was growing up, this nation was preparing for another bolt out of the blue. And we were probably looking in the wrong direction, except for perhaps just a few people, when the bolt out of the blue finally came. It is our job to try to do our best, to do our level best, to have the technology and the people in place to prevent that from happening, to do what we need to do. I want to thank all the witnesses for being here today, and I now need to bring this hearing to a close. I want to thank all the witnesses for testifying. It has been highly educational. I look forward to working with the agencies and working with our outside information sources. If there is no objection, the record will remain open for additional statements. Hearing none, so ordered. Members, and the questions will be submitted, and answers may be given for the record. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is now closed.